Based on based on previous work on the autonomic psychophysiology of cognitive reappraisal and suppression, we actually generated the hypotheses that cognitive reappraisal, meaning actively selecting a strategy of something that I'm going to say to myself, implementing it, and then monitoring its effect, reappraisal will come online early in an episode of an emotion experience. Whereas suppression is something that by definition requires the emotion to billow up or to increase to an intensity that's sufficient for then implementing suppression, not showing what one is feeling on the face. So we literally expected different parts of the prefrontal cortex to show this temporal dissociation for these two specific types of emotion regulation. The way that we tried to probe this in the MRI scanner was by using a task that had the following components. We trained a team of 18 young women to either watch a film clip, to think objectively about the content of the film, or to keep their face still so that if someone was standing in the room, they could not tell what film clip or what the person was feeling by looking at the face. 3-second instruction to tell the participant what to do, then a 15-second film clip that was either neutral or disgusting. And here, by disgusting, I'll explain what those were. Then we asked people to rate how negative are you feeling right this moment just after having watched the film clip. And then to allow a washout period for the emotion that was previously generated during the film clip, we asked people to watch a static, neutral image with no emotional content, and then to do a asterisk counting task to further grab their attention away from the previous emotion before the next trial. We used 10 watch neutral films, 10 watching these negative or disgusting film clips, 10 actively reappraising or cognitive reappraisal during negative films, and 10 actively suppressing, showing any emotion on the face for 10 negative films. So these are our 4 experimental conditions. The 10 neutral film clips, they were non-emotion inducing, nature scenes with no human actors. The 30 disgust-inducing film clips included surgical procedures showing blood and cutting and so forth, vomiting, animal slaughter, and human amputations. We used 2 counterbalanced orders of the film clips in order to control for any systematic stimulus order effects. And we tested and found no differences in our 2 different stimulus orders on negative emotion ratings, disgust facial behavior, or fMRI bold neural responses. In terms of the results, we first, for these set of 40 film clips, we collected 19 young women who provided ratings separate from our brain imaging sample of young women. And as you can see, the negative film clips were indeed associated with much greater negative, self-reported negative emotion compared to the neutral film clips. In terms of emotion measures, where we had 3 different indices. First, there was the question during fMRI scanning, how negative do you feel right this moment after having watched the film clip? When people were doing reappraisal, we found that there was a significant reduction in negative emotion, but not so for suppression. As you can see here, the 3rd bar to the right, reappraisal, was the only one that was associated with a small but significant reduction in self-reported negative emotion experience. Suppression did not differ from watching negative films. Next, we attached a mini camera to the head coil inside the magnet and were able to videotape in real time people's facial expressions. And we had 2 people who were blind to the intent of the study who coded facial expressions for specific facial movements that were indicative of disgust. And what we found was that suppression yet indeed resulted in a reduction in facial movements or actions indicative of disgust. Much more so than reappraisal, but reappraisal a little bit. So disgust expressions were chosen because they could be coded very clearly, and also because disgust in and of itself is part of the body's response to objects that are revolting and nauseating, like amputations, vomiting, animal slaughter, etc. It's interesting because that discussed facial expressions very powerfully communicate information to others to modify their behaviors. So we're really interested in being able to capture this with the video camera inside the magnet. Here are the three, in the black circles, are the specific portions of the people's faces that we coded for the expression of disgust. And here are two examples. So here what we see is that there is a significant increase in disgust facial expression during watch negative compared to watch neutral. And then moving to the right, we see that there is a significant reduction with reappraisal and further reduction with suppression, indicating that the suppression, above and beyond the other conditions, did indeed result in keeping the face still and not expressing disgust, even though people internally were feeling disgust. That's an important distinction. The third thing that we looked at was functional magnetic resonance imaging, blood oxygen level dependent signal, or MRI bold signal. And what we found was that reappraisal and suppression had opposing effects on both amygdala and insular cortical neural activity in the following way. So for the contrast of watching negative films versus watching neutral films, what we found essentially here, shown in the black circles, is bilateral dorsal amygdala. And when you look at the time series below, what we see is that essentially the solid black bars are reappraisal. And if you look, you'll see that at the end of each 15-second film clip, there seemed to be a reduction in neural activity in left and right amygdala when using cognitive reappraisal. The dotted line, the thin dotted line, represents suppression trials. And what you can see is that by the end of each 15-second film clip, specifically the last 3 time points, 11.5 to 15 seconds, we found a significant increase in neural activity in left and right amygdala during suppression compared to cognitive reappraisal, meaning that at least these neural indicators of emotional experience were enhanced by suppression, reduced by reappraisal. In addition to amygdala, what's shown here for the same contrast is bilateral anterior insular cortex. This is an area that's been repeatedly and reliably associated with the experience of disgust, detection of disgust, and the generation of the emotion of disgust. And here, bilaterally, again, we see the same exact pattern of reappraisal resulting in reductions of neural activity in the insula, whereas the thin dotted line, suppression, resulting in a significant increase in activity in this emotion-related and disgust-specific brain region.